Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Tanya, and today I'm gonna do a reaction video to the channel Lost in the Pond, who I have reacted to in the past before, but normally I watch his videos in my own time. I really enjoy them. And if you've never seen his channel before, his name is Laurence, and he is, he's a Brit who moved to the US. Oh my gosh, like I can't even remember now, like 16 years ago, 17 years ago, I don't know, something like that. But he is living in my home state of Illinois right now. He lives in Chicago. So anyway, I came across this video that he did 4 days ago called 8 American Habits That Confused Me as a Brit. And I thought this would be interesting just because even though it's like Brits versus Americans, a lot of these types of like videos, you can just do, like you could scratch out Brit and put kind of anything versus American, because there's so many differences in America. Like it could literally be Aussies versus American. It could be Canadians versus American, like, because even Canada is very different than the United States. Even Canadians think we're weird and crazy. So anyway, I thought this would be interesting. Like regardless of what country you're from, you might be able to relate to some of these things that he has to say, because like I said, America just does things differently. And if you're new, the way I like to do my reactions is I'm reacting to the video and I'm learning new things about whatever it is that I'm reacting to, but then I will also give my 2 cents, like from an American perspective, someone who has lived in the United States my entire life, and I can maybe debunk some things, I can confirm some things, maybe I can maybe explain things better for people who maybe don't quite understand something. You know, that's what I like to do, is when I'm learning something new in these videos, I like to give my commentary on my perspective of it. So let's see what Laurence has for us today.
Thanks. Just put it on my knee. Yeah. Hello, I'm Laurence and I'm on a quest to uncover all of the memos that Britain and America lost in the pond, and one of those memos pertains to habits, specifically American habits that confused me when I first moved to the United States. And I'm not talking about things like picking your nose, because I think we all do that. Most of you do that, I think, is what I've heard. I'm talking about habits that seem to be culturally ingrained in America and not so much in Britain. One such habit is that Americans tend to be more direct. And so in the interest of assimilation, I'm going to do likewise. If you are not yet subscribed to this channel, do that now. In the meantime, here are 8 American habits that confused me as a Brit. Alright, so I was already prepared for this one just because, you know, we watch a lot of American films back in Britain. But when my new American relatives and or friends started calling me things like buddy and pal, there was a weird novelty to it. I can't really explain it. It's like how I've said before.
I would say buddy is a lot more common than pal. But both of those words can be used in a positive or a negative way. It just depends on who you're saying it to and how you're saying it. Buddy is usually like you say it to a kid. I used to say it to my son, like, good job, buddy. And I think the word just bud is like a very northern Midwestern term. So like you'll hear a lot of people in like Wisconsin area call, hey bud, how you doing, bud? And a lot of people everywhere else don't like to be called bud for some reason, but it's like very common for people in Wisconsin just to call everybody bud. Pal, I only hear pal if somebody is being rude, like oh my god, let me think of an example. You need to wait your turn, pal. Like that's the context I usually hear pal. However, buddy and pal can also be what you guys would say as mate, if you're saying it in a positive way.
before, you know, how I always thought yellow school buses were simply a trope of American films. To some degree, you start thinking that about everything, and words like buddy and pal fell into that category. Growing up in Britain, where the equivalent word is mate, it took some getting used to, and I also noticed that just like with the word mate, both buddy and pal can be used in an affectionate way and a not so affectionate way. An example would be if an American hasn't seen you in a long time, they might say, "Hey buddy, what's up?" Because, you know, they think I'm a dog. On the other hand, if you took their car seat, they'll look at you with that steely expression on their face and say, "I called shotgun, buddy." And, you know, this happens all the time. It could mean that I'm just an asshole. It's probably that. Now, I can't say that this goes for all immigrants that move to the United States, but one thing that I've experienced a lot is Americans saying, "I love your accent." Did you order that online? It is a common question that I get from people. You know, "Ooh, you sound just like the Geico Gecko. Could I just put you in the corner and have you speak to me?"
Oh my God, Tika was not happy about Cody walking over there into her territory. Americans love other accents. It can be literally just someone from a state over here listening to someone from a state over here, and they're going to say, "I love your accent." It could be someone from America listening to someone from New Zealand, and they're going to be like, "I love your accent." Like, we just love accents. We just love them. There are so many different accents in America, but we love them all.
Day. And yes, those are real things that have been said to me, but you know, in some ways it's good because it's an icebreaker. I'm an introvert. I don't want to just, you know, think of things to say. And so if they want me to say words like water, tomato, and banana, it's an easy enough paycheck. They get a good giggle out of it, and I never have to see them again. Coffee is a huge thing over here, and of course they drink it in cups that are as big as this one right here, because not only do pound for pound Americans drink more coffee than British people, they also drink them, on the whole, in bigger cups. Now, I never used to drink coffee, that is, when I was in Britain. So I didn't previously have a point of comparison between the coffee cups in this country and those in Britain. But you know, a few years ago, the wife and I went to Paris. And then we went to England just recently, and it dawned on me, the cups over there, on the whole, are smaller. The default that they will give you for just a latte are like there, you know, they're small. In some ways, that's good because it sort of promotes responsible caffeine intake. On the other, when I was in Britain, instead of just ordering one small coffee like that, I'd get 3 of them. That's why I was jet lagged the whole time. I've just realised that. And you might say, well, that's not really to do with American habits, that's just what's on offer. But even I, now, as an American citizen, do have the habit of just ordering a grande. And I think the real habit that Americans do more than Europeans is taking this with you on the go, through the park, a little saunter around the shopping mall, which is probably where you bought this. And I think that even though Britain is starting to catch up in terms of its coffee culture, there's still quite a wide difference between the coffee drinking habits of the two peoples.
I honestly think that I don't know if I can say like this is strictly an American thing. I think that this is more of a times thing. Everybody's in a hurry. Everyone's in a rush and they want to get their drink and they want to go do what they got to do. And so this generation that does that, they're not going to coffee houses or diners and sitting down drinking coffee like my generation did. Because that's all I ever did was I would sit inside an American diner and I would order my 1 hot cup of coffee and get free refills of it as long as I was there. And that was what my generation did. But like my daughter's generation is very much, let's go pick up this large coffee in a drive-thru and go somewhere. And that's not, yeah, people my age now do that, but I think it was the younger generation that like started that.
And the part of me that really loves my convenience likes to walk down the street with a coffee in my hand. But on the other, I don't like to give in to this societal pressure of always needing to be busy and on the go. So I mostly just drink it in the bath. Americans have this big habit of using the word right in ways that other people don't. And I'm not just talking about politics. I'm talking about the way in which it's used in sentences. First of all, there is this thing Americans do when they want to show agreement with another person, where they say, "I know, right?" Or they might just abbreviate that question/sentence to just right. And
it's because a lot of places have their own version of this. Canadians will say, "Eh," like that was a good game, eh? it feels and sounds weird for Americans to do that, honestly. So everything is right. That was a good game, right? Somebody says something, I know, right? And that's just us agreeing. I think that maybe Australians also say A, like the Canadians do. But it's just our version of agreeing with someone. That's just our word choice. But let me know in the comments, like, where you're from and what is your version of that. Do you say A, like EH or AY? Or do you say right? Or do you say some other word that I'm unaware of?
Sort of infectious. It's the sort of thing that, you know, in my early days in the US, I found myself saying again and again and again, until I remember that I'm a bit of a contrarian, and since everybody else was doing it, I had to stop doing it. But there's another use of the word right that I think I've also been guilty of, where they'll use it almost like an interjection. So for example, my management team might say something like, Laurence is the next big thing, right? He's smart, he's talented, he's the third sexiest man alive. And while statistically, a third of that is true.
It's so funny listening to him to try to do an American accent, because when he does an American accent, he sounds like he's from Chicago, talking with the back of your throat like this. It's so funny. It's so funny to me.
The important part here is that my management team remembered to stick the word right in there so that you wouldn't stop listening. On the other hand, it's hours and not miles. That's right, in Britain, if we talk about the distance from point A to point B, we'll typically say it's a certain amount of miles, as opposed to kilometres. But this is not a conversation about imperial versus metric. This is merely me giving the British perspective so that I can contrast it with the fact that a lot of the time, Americans, when they tell me how long it takes to get from, say, Chicago to Indianapolis, it isn't a couple of 100 miles, it's hours. That's because we often stop at the dog park. Maybe this is a result of the fact that Americans drive longer distances. And
probably. I mean, we do, especially Midwesterners. Midwesterners are known for, like, you're not often going to catch us going to the airport and flying anywhere. We will drive if we are able to drive. Like when I went to Tennessee, that was like, I don't know, 13-hour drive. We drove there and back every time we went. And the only time I flew somewhere was to California, because otherwise it would have taken me 3-4 days to drive there. But yeah, we do drive a lot, and we very, very rarely will say it's about 20 miles to get there. Like, we will say it takes 20 minutes to get there. I do that every time. If somebody tells me something is 6 miles away, I will assume they mean 10 minutes. I would rather you just tell me how many minutes is it going to take me to get there. And that's how I tell people things. It takes you 5 minutes to get there.
So they need to know that time, because sometimes you can drive so long in the US that you actually need to stop for the night and, book a motel. The time becomes more important, I suppose, to a potential commute. I still prefer to go by the bigger number, which is the distance, and therefore is more impressive to me, but to each his own. I didn't know whether to put this one in for a while, and then I thought about it.
I mean, I could tell you, like, how many miles it is from my city to the city of Chicago, but that's not going to tell you anything, because the city of Chicago, not just the city, but that whole area up north in Chicagoland is so crowded, and there are so many people and there's so much traffic that it could take you anywhere from 2 to like 4 hours just to get there, just depending on the traffic and all the people. So, if somebody says, how long does it take you to get to Chicago? I usually say it takes me about 3 hours, because you just never know. You never know how long it's going to take up there.
Realize that there's actually many different facets to this particular entry, and that entry is this: Americans will use parking lots as death traps. Now, I have a caveat here. This is by no means all Americans. It's very specific ones. When I worked in the call center, I used to get a ride from someone who lived in the local area. And one day, it had been snowing really bad outside, and she decided, hey, British person with your naive ways, have you ever done a 360-degree skid in a car park? Although she wouldn't have said car park. And I thought she was joking. It'd been a long day.
That's called a donut. Those are called donuts. We call them donuts. You go into an empty parking lot that has like, a dusting of snow all over it. Make sure the parking lot is empty. Don't be dumb. It's not like this is legal anyway, but people do it. You go in the parking lot and you hit your brake and you go spinning around. It's called doing donuts. At least in Illinois, it's called doing donuts. I think Minnesota has their own word for it, but most people say doing donuts.
Of people yelling at us until she did it just there in the partially empty parking lot, and we span around. I thought I was about to die and or be deported, and she was
It's
laughing her
fun.
head off. At first I thought this was an isolated incident until some teenagers started drifting, as it's known, in the car park to my local school. You might say, oh Laurence, great, you've cherry-picked a part of your memory bank to make it seem as if things like this happen all the time. They don't, but parking lots are a place in which I've seen differences in people's awareness of other cars. In Britain, and this may have changed in the smartphone era, if you're walking into one of the big stores from a car park, you're usually hyper aware of any cars that may be behind you trying to get out. So you walk at the side right up against any cars here, and you do so at a speed that is slightly above walking pace. In America, those people on foot are not always in such a rush. Like, you could be in your car trying to drive this way and there's like two people walking really slowly there and they don't care. It's not been bred into Americans to care. I talked a few weeks ago about
This is not an American thing, really. I think it's just a person-to-person thing. Like, were you raised to stand on the right, walk on the right, out of the middle of the parking lot or out of the middle of the road? Like, did your parents teach you good manners? Because if they did, you're probably not the person that's doing that. But I know what he's talking about, because I have been stuck behind stupid assholes taking their sweet ass time walking through a parking lot right in the middle of the aisle. And it is very frustrating and very annoying and very rude. But people who have manners don't do that.
British tendency to want to save the face of other people, to not put them out. This is a generalization, it's not true of everyone, but it does exist nonetheless. Americans don't necessarily have that approach to society, and I think this is perfectly embodied by their approach to exiting a parking lot. Here's a habit that... Sorry. Here's a habit that I feel like I've picked up since being here. Americans, if they have access to vacation days, which is not always a given, will take those vacation days, but still occasionally work on those vacation days, even if it's just a light email or two. And I feel like when I was in England recently, I told myself, no work, no work, no way, Jose. I'm just going to go.
I think the only people who do that, though, are, people with either really important jobs, or something. Like, if you just, work in a store, obviously you're not taking your work home with you. It just depends on the job, I think.
Enjoy the countryside and a plate of fish and chips and come home. I did do some filming and I had 3 plates of fish and chips to make up for it. But this tendency among some American workers with whom I've worked was quite jarring. I think in Britain, where we are given, I think it's 28 days of paid leave a year, we value that time. I think we value our holidays. We see the importance of rejuvenation, and that importance isn't just toward your physical well-being, it also improves your job performance. And so this American habit of working beyond regular hours is one that's born out of a society where it's almost shameful not to work hard, to put in the hours, to go above and beyond just to get that promotion.
This is true, and this is actually something that I really hate about my own country. Yes, I love that we all are hard workers, and we do a lot of good things by working hard. But I think that mental health and physical health is very important, and people need breaks. And they need good breaks, not just, you get 3 days off or whatever, 7 days off. But you need a decent break. And I think that's the reason why you get a lot of people who get so burnt out on work, or they just up and quit, or they just call in sick if they're not sick, just to have a day off, because Americans really are overworked. I agree with this one. I wish that we had more of like the way Brits do it, or the way Australia does it, or the way New Zealand does it, where you just get more breaks. And like he said, people would probably do better at their job if they had more breaks. A lot of these people who are working on their days off usually are not wanting to be working on their days off. Very few people are doing that on their days off and wanting to do it that way, you know? That's what I think.
I got burned out doing that at the call center, partly because I had to deal with people, but partly because I just didn't have a life. So when I took vacation time at that company or other companies, I really took that vacation time. It's only since I became a bona fide YouTube sensation that I found myself doing occasional work on holiday. I think it's easier when you love your job, but it doesn't mean that rest isn't important, which is why you should stay tuned until the end of this video to watch my take on why British and American sleep time is very different. And I put this one in because I didn't want this video to feel like it was a complete slam against America and American life. I don't feel particularly negative toward most of these habits, and this is especially true of this one, which is more of an anti-habit. It's about chewing gum. Now, when I think of chewing gum, I think of Americans for some reason. But I noticed something when I was in Britain, and it was this, that the pavements, or as they're known here, sidewalks, were pretty littered, especially in downtown areas, with chewing gum. It occurred to me at that moment that I hadn't really seen a chewing gum laden sidewalk on that level since I lived in Britain. This was a common sight, just walking down a downtown street. In America, I'm not saying it doesn't happen.
People, I would say most people in America, they care about littering, you know, they care about having trash all over the ground. Yes, you get assholes who throw shit on the ground all the time, but I would say that most Americans really care about put your shit in the trash or put your stuff in the recycling. Like, I think that, because it is very much part of our culture to throw things in the trash and recycle items. So, I don't know.
And I mean, gum spitters are everywhere.
But the gum, I don't often see gum on the ground, but when I was in junior high, that's all anybody ever did was chew gum and then stick it on the bottom of the desk. You know, if this is your desk and this is underneath, they would take the gum out of their mouth and stick it underneath on the desk right there. Cody is the desk. And so if you accidentally touched underneath the desk, you might feel like 5 pieces of chewed up gum underneath there. It's disgusting. Kids are so gross.
But with the exception of occasional cracks in the sidewalk, they always seem to be a bit more clean than the ones in Britain. And so I've put this in here because I want to ask the question, is that because Americans have a good habit of not spitting out chewing gum as much as British people? Or is it because they replaced the sidewalk every now and again? So those are just some of the habits that confused me when I first moved to America. Let me know in the comments if you're American and if you habitually do any of these things. As promised, here is me comparing British and American sleep time. You'll watch that next. And until the next video, goodbye.
The other thing with the gum is that I would say most parents who let their kids have gum teach them to hold on to the wrapper, and when you're done chewing your gum, you just spit it into the wrapper when you're done, and then wad it up and throw that in the garbage. So that could also be part of it too. Like, we're taught to keep that little wrapper with us so that we can spit it out. And I think also just, it's gross. Like, who wants to spit out your gum on the sidewalk knowing that anyone could just walk on it? Like, that's just gross. That's gross. But anyway, yeah, that was a pretty cool video. I'm actually very curious to know if, like, first of all, where are you from? I know that most of my audience is Aussies, but I want to know, like, where you're from, and do any of these things, like, pertain to you also? Like, are you more like the Brits? Are you more like the Americans? What is it like where you live? I imagine most people are not like Americans. Like, I realize America is a very different kind of country. We were in isolation for a long time, the same way as Australia was, which is why certain cultures expanded in our countries the way they have, as well as language for like America. That's why language exploded in a bunch of different ways. And why we have so many different types of American English in America, because everyone speaks so differently. It's just all very fascinating stuff, you know, and I love learning about these things, because every once in a while I'll be like, whoa, that's not normal for you. That's totally normal for me, or something that's totally normal for other people. I'd be like, what? I never even heard of that. Like, I just love learning this stuff. I think it's so cool. And I celebrate our differences. I think that we all, no matter what country we're from, we all have so many similarities, all of us. But what makes us all so special is our uniqueness, and what makes us different too. Like, we're very alike in so many ways, but like, we all grew up in, you know, different environments and around different kind of people and stuff. So all these differences about us that make us so unique, I actually really love and celebrate that stuff. And so when people get really angry about how maybe Americans don't do things the same way as other countries do it or whatever, I don't know why people look at it like a negative thing. It's just our culture, you know? And I don't really know many Americans or any Americans that will look at another culture and go, ew, that is gross, that's wrong, why do you do that? Like, I see a lot of other countries say that about America, but I never see, I'm sure there are Americans who do it. I'm just saying, like, I never see Americans go, that's so weird. Why do they do that? Why do you say it like that? Why do you spell it like that? Like, it's just weird. I don't know. And maybe it's just one of those Americans are friendly kind of thing, and that's why we're different. I don't know. You guys can let me know in the comments what you think. And did you agree or disagree with any of these things on his list? But yeah, that's going to do it. My throat is starting to hurt. I don't know if you can tell in my voice, but that's going to do it. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, please give it a like, subscribe if you haven't done that yet, and I'll see you next time.